Mashchisom es oretz, I'm going to destroy the land. Rashi makes a comment here. Rashi says, in the words of Chazal, that the words Himola haaretz chomos, that the land is filled with chomos. Chomos means violence. But Rashi retranslates this word and says the following: Noinechtam gazadinom ela al hagezel. So we're talking about gezel, theft or robbery, daylight robbery perhaps, which includes violence. Hence the translation of violence meaning gezel, they snatch things from each other. Now, there is a question about this Rashi, before Hashem asked, and that is, we just read the previous posuk, and that posuk talked about v'hinei nishchasa, and it said ki hishchis kol baso es darka al oretz, and we translated that again with the help of the Mepharshim, that when we talk about hashchasa, we're talking about major averos, gila roa, shvichas domim, avodah zarah, these sorts of averos. So how is that now in the very next posuk? Rashi tells us that basically what tipped the balance, what caused the sort of the gong to be sounded up in heaven that the world was going to be destroyed, was the gezel. So which is it? Is it the big averos, is it avodah zarah, or is it gezel? The Bartanura in Pirkei Avos, when he talks about the kala kebachamura, the Mishnah Perik Beis Mishnah Aleph, and he talks about the kala kebachamura, and he says, and the Mishnah says, that you should never treat a mitzvah lightly, because a person does not know the reward for mitzvahs. Don't know the reward for mitzvahs. And the point is that he explains that it's true that we don't know the reward for mitzvahs aseh. We don't know reward. The Torah never tells us. And Rabbi Yoina explains why, because the Rebbe wants us to do all mitzvahs, and if we knew the reward for mitzvahs, we'd only do those that have a big reward. So the Rebbe doesn't tell us the reward for mitzvahs, and neither does he tell us the punishment for the avoidance of mitzvahs aseh. However, when it comes to mitzvahs lo aseh, mitzvahs lo aseh, that's very different. The Bartanura explains there, the Torah spells out very clearly what the punishments are. We've got 4 types of misa, skila, sreifa, herek, chenek, and we've got malchus, we've got koris, misa b'nei shamayim. The Torah is very, very clear as to the punishments. So we've got the punishments spelled out very, very clearly for all the lois asets. Sorry, quite right. For all the asset 246 we don't have, but for those two we do have 365 lois asets. We have the averos and we have the punishments for those averos very clearly spelled out. And the point is that the Torah, in spelling out the punishments for the averos, gives us a measure, gives us a way of trying to gauge the severity of an avera. For example, you know, there are lots of averos that are very serious, and of course they have an oynish of misa. There are other mitzvahs or other averos which are less serious, and misa might be in the form of skila, which is the most severe. Then there may be others which is sreifa, which is slightly less severe. So from that we can gauge that there's a slightly different negative quality between doing a mitzvah, an avera which carries skila, and an avera which carries sreifa. And then when we go down to others, like misa b'nei shamayim, or a loika, malchus, so from the punishments we can see the severity of the avera. Very interestingly, sometimes it seems as if it got the Oynish and Misa all over the place. Torah is full of Onshim Sham Misa, and Shabbos, and Tzicha, and all sorts of Averos that a person could do, Misa all over the place. It looks as though, we could kill people. The judicial system was just full of hanging and shooting people or whatever, just meting out the punishment. Under Misa, we know from the Gemara, that they very, very rarely actually carried out the death penalty in the Jewish state, the original Jewish state, Shalom, etc. Very, very rarely. In fact, the Gemara says, there's a little machloikas there, whether a Bezdin, Kotlana, whether Bezdin, called a murderous Bezdin, if they kill a person, if they execute a person once in 7 years, and according to one opinion, once in 70 years. So you can see that, the death penalty was never used. So Kasha, we've got the Kasha. Well, why does the Torah talk about death all over the place? Why not have a reasonable punishment that you can actually carry out? People do the Averis. And the answer is that this is what the Patanura is saying. The Torah doesn't tell us about punishments just because the Beis Din should be carrying out punishments all the time. The Torah is talking about punishments to give us the message of how serious the Aveira is. So the Torah wants to tell you a gauge you can see by looking at the punishment, not that it's going to carry it out all the time. As I say, very, very rarely come to the punishments. Very rarely were they carried out. Let's now come to Gezel. Gezel is the most interesting one. But for Gezel, the punishment is not even Malchus. Yeah, for whatever reason, because it's a lavanita glacé or a shovain or whatever, you can give back. For Gezel, there is no Malchus. So you would think that Gezel, is one of the minor Averis, given that we have the scale given to us by the Batanura just now. Yeah, from Misa all the way down to Malchus, and even less than Malchus, which is Gezel. So Gezel seems fairly minor. So we come back to our Rashi, that when we were talking in the Posuk about we're talking about etc., etc., big Averis, and then later on, Rashi says, seems to be a rather minor offence, given that it carries not even Malchus. So how is that? Yes, seems a rather strange, mitzvah, aveira to choose. It's not in the same league as Avodah Zarah and Shvichas Damim. So, this is the kasha we have on Rashi, and it appears, the way Rashi puts it, that the serious aveiros that they committed, the three cardinal aveiros, they're being sort of overlooked. Rosh Hashanah seems to be prepared to forgive them those aveiros. And when it comes to Gezel, all of a sudden the Rebbeinu Shalom is taking up the cudgels and decides to destroy the world. So let's see if we can get some sort of measure. And what I'd like to direct your attention to is a Meshech Chochmah in Parshes Beshalach. And this Meshech Chochmah is on the heading V'hamayim lehem chayma mi'minam mismailam. The reason why the Meshech Chochmah is going to say what he does is because along the way he wants to bring a medrash that the word chayma is spelled differently. Sometimes it's spelled with a vav, and once it's spelled without a vav, and the Chazal dash, and chayma without a vav spells out chayma. But that won't be our concern. It's what he tells us on the way, which is of particular interest to us. And he says, when we have a look at the Darkei Torah, the way the Torah unfolds before us, for those sorts of mitzvahs, the serious mitzvahs that we talk about, yesh kores, uskila, ushar misais, and other misais, so the Torah tells us for these serious averas, there are consequent punishments. And indeed, malchus. However, when it comes to somebody not being very nice, like, for example, Kamoy Machlokas, somebody starts Machlokas, or Lashon Hora, somebody speaks Lashon Hora, Rechilas, or Gezel. When it comes to those Averas, which are Nimusias, basically Benodon Mechaveros, then there's no punishment. You can't be brought to court, and you will not be punished for saying Lashon Hora. Heinous crime. Of course, we know Chavetz Chaim spent his life trying to teach us the seriousness of Lashon Hora. But Lemaisa, going back to the Bartanura's scale, we don't have any punishment for Nimusios and Midois. We don't have any punishment meted out to any individual for contravening these sort of things. And as I said before, even Gezel, there's no Malchus. There's no Malchus for Gezel, and certainly no Malchus for Lashon Hora and Rechilas.